Hello, welcome to Mr. Paul's Pantry. I'm Mr. Paul and it's nice to be back here again with you all after a short break. Now, today's recipe is something that a few people have asked about, and it's for mini meat pies. I have recently had to change my diet, so I've had to start having smaller portions. So I thought it was a good idea to make these mini pies, which will help me and help the people who've been inquiring about them. So the meat I've chosen today is chicken. It's the most universal thing available at a reasonable price. And it's chicken, mushroom and ham mini pies. You can eat them cold. You can eat them warm for a main meal with vegetables, or and you can freeze them for later. That's what the nice thing about it is. You can make a half a dozen or a dozen of them, freeze them and have them whenever you wish. Now, you can freeze them raw or you can freeze them cooked. It doesn't make any difference. I've explained that in the video. Also in the video, I'm going to show you how to make some nice puff pastry parcels, or pillows as we call them in the trade. Puff pastry pillows with the same filling. Okay, so that's two for the price of one today. So let's get on with it with my chicken, mushroom and ham mini pies. So here we have the ingredients for the chicken, ham and mushroom pie. Now today, as I just explained, I'm making mini pies. Firstly because I'm on a new diet and I've got to cut down my portions. So instead of making one big pie, I'm going to make small ones, so I can either have one or two depending on my mood. Okay, you can freeze them raw, or you can freeze them cooked. I'll explain about that afterwards. Now here are the ingredients. If you can see them here, I've got, I'll give you the quantities in a moment, don't worry about that. Here's some chicken chopped. Everything's chopped very small because I'm having it in mini pies, okay? So I've got some chicken. These are chicken thighs cut up. I've got some ham cut up, cooked ham. I've got some mushrooms. Now I'm using portobello mushrooms today, which, no, I beg your pardon. I'm using shiitake mushrooms. I normally use portobello or chestnut mushrooms. Couldn't get any, so these are shiitake mushrooms. I've got a little butter, one garlic clove, some sage, thyme from the garden. Now, if you haven't got fresh thyme and you want to use dried, just use half a teaspoonful. I've got some plain flour, I've got some chicken stock, and I've got a small chopped onion. Notice I've chopped everything quite small. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get the filling all ready. I've already shown you how to make the pastry. That should be cooling in the fridge now. I'll make the filling. Let's do it. Okay, first of all, put the heat on and into the pan, just let it heat up slightly. Then I'll put a little oil in the pan. There's about a tablespoon, that's all we need. We don't need a lot. There we are. And as soon as that's warm enough to spread over the pan base, we're going to pop in, first of all, the onions. Now, in case you're still wondering about the quantities, I have shown you the recipe list on there, and there is 100 grams of onion there. It's one small onion chopped finely. You can see how fine it's chopped. It's not desperate whether it's slightly over or slightly under, but I've weighed that. There's 100 grams there, and I'm just going to leave that until it starts softening a little. There we go. Once that starts softening down nicely, we're going to add the clove of garlic. We don't put that into the hot pan first because it does tend to burn if you're not careful, and we don't want that. Now next going into there is going to be the chicken. Oops. Now there's 250 grams of chicken gone in there. It's thigh meat what I've used. You can use breast or whatever you want, or leg, and that's going in with the onion, and we need to just make sure that's white, not pink, all over. I'm going to turn the heat down slightly now. We don't want a roaring heat for this. Medium heat, and that needs cooking for about 5 minutes. Keep it on the move so it doesn't stick or burn. You can see now it's going nice and white, all the pink is vanishing, and that is 250 grams of chicken. Now all the pink's almost vanished now. That's been about 4 minutes. So I wasn't far out when I said 5. About 4 minutes has gone, and there it is. It's looking reasonably well. Now into that go now the mushrooms. And remember, I normally use portobello mushrooms for this. I like them. They're more flavour than the ordinary white button mushrooms. Couldn't get them today, so I had to get shiitake, but no difference. Make a nice flavour just the same. Make sure that's all mixed well together. Starts to cook down nicely. I'm making a bit of a mess on the stove here, never mind. Got out of practice, I think. Now we're going to put in next, we're going to put the thyme. This is the thyme from my garden, just a couple of sprigs. If you haven't got fresh thyme, just use dried, and you need about a half a teaspoon, that's all. So that's the thyme leaves going in now. If you have fresh thyme and you have a stalk like that, just pull the leaves down the opposite way to where they're growing upwards, and they'll all come off, leaving you just with a stalk like that. They're very easy. Don't worry about fiddling about picking each bit off like that. Just pull it down and off it goes. There we go. That's it. I put 4 little stalks in, just the leaves off them. The flowers are still on there, it doesn't matter. And it's smelling delicious already. Now that's cooking down nicely. We need to leave that now for 4 minutes. Leave that now for 4 minutes. I'll be back as soon as that's ready to do the next stage. Okay, 4 minutes. Next going in the ham. Now you can use ham or bacon. If you haven't got ham, use bacon. But it's nicest if you use cooked ham because if it's a bit thick, it just takes a lot longer to cook. Bacon's not too bad. But if it's ham, cut it a little, use cooked ham. Just cut it in chunks, as long as it's small enough to go into these small pies. And by the way, if you're going to make a big plate pie or a family pie, just leave the pieces of ingredient larger, that's all. You don't change the ingredients, don't change anything, just change the size that you cut up everything that goes into it. And that, I think you'll agree, is looking quite tasty up to now. We're going to leave that another 2 or 3 minutes now. Now we've got the ham in. Okay, the 4 minutes is up now. Everything's looking delicious. Now what's going in next is the butter. I've just got about a tablespoon. I think it's about 30 grams. I didn't weigh it. I just fished it out with a tablespoon. So that's going in first, like that. Make sure it's all mixed round. And then once that's melted and incorporated, we're going to add the plain flour. Now the plain flour is, well, it's 25 grams, that's all it is, 25 grams. Mix that round, make sure it's all incorporated with the filling, not just in one blob in the middle, because it will start to thicken up a little when you put that in, when it mixes with the butter. In theory, what we're actually making is that we're making a roux inside there, similar to when you, well, similar, exactly, like when you're making a white sauce. So that's a roux gone in there, you can see it forming in the middle there. Make sure it's all mixed round. And once it's all incorporated, then we can start and add the stock. I'm using chicken stock today. And another thing I tell you every time I use stock in a video, if you're using a stock cube, be very, very careful when you're adding salt afterwards, because all stock cubes, without any exception, contain a lot of salt. If you buy stock in a carton or in a jar, it'll tell you on the label whether it's got salt in or not. But stock cubes always have. So I'm using some stock here, that's going in next. And I'm going to keep that on the move now, so we don't get any lumps in the sauce. It'll just start to incorporate and thicken and make a nice sauce to sit inside the pie. So one last thing we have to do now, before it cools down too much, we need to season it. Now, little taste first of all. Little taste. Now it's not too bad. I have to be careful with my salt, so it's going to be a very tiny amount in there, because don't forget what I said about the stock in the salt. And we're going to go ahead with the black pepper. I love that. Just keep that on the move. Don't let it burn on the bottom or stick. Cooking is all about patience more than anything. Patience. Recipes aren't that important with cooking, because cooking is an art. You can add bits and leave bits out and this, that and the other. When you're baking, of course, that's a different thing. Baking is a science, and you have to stick to certain parameters in the recipe. Otherwise, it's a disaster. So there we are. I'm just going to leave that to thicken up now nicely. Turn the heat up slightly, and you'll see it start to bubble in a second or two. There it is, it's starting to bubble up now. I'm just going to cook that off for about a minute, that's all. There we are, the sauce is thickening up nicely. Now if you think that's a little too thin, you can add a little more thickener, little flour or little corn flour or whatever you want. I'm going to just let that settle now for one more minute for it to reduce slightly, and then I'm going to let it cool down, because as I keep telling you every time we make a pie, you cannot put warm filling in a pastry case. As soon as you put a warm filling in a pastry case, the pastry goes soggy and it never recovers. You get a soggy bottom pie, which nobody wants. Well, there's my other minute up now, and you can see it's thickening up quite nicely. And I think once that cools down, we'll be onto a winner. Right, the filling's cooled now, and we're all ready to make the pies. Now I'm going to use this tin today. It's a deep muffin tin, but don't forget, you can use any size tin you want. You can use these small ones you can buy, like this, or you can make a plate pie. You can do whatever you want with the filling that you've just made. The only difference is, if you're not making mini ones like this, then I suggest you don't cut the ingredients, the meat and the yes, the meat and the mushrooms. Don't cut them too small. I've only cut them small because we're going into a very small space here. So what we're going to do next is the pastry. And I've rolled out my pastry to a reasonable thickness. Don't forget what I said, when you roll pastry, keep it on the move, and that way it won't stick to your work surface. I think you can see the thickness of the pastry there, I hope. And I'm going to just cut out my discs. So what I'm going to do here is I've got 6 cases here. I'm going to fill them, and I'll fill the other ones off camera. I won't bore you with the intricacies of making that. So we're going to fill these pretty much to the top, not overfill them. We don't want it spilling everywhere when you're baking them, but we don't want any empty spaces under the lid either. That's one thing we don't want. Nothing worse in a pie than when you open it, the lid's sitting high and the meat's sitting low. So there we've got the fillings in there, and I'm going to just go round the edge. You can use water. I've cracked an egg to do the tops with, so I'm not going to waste it. I'm just going to do a little round the edge there like that. There isn't a lot of edge to put the thing, so if you like this and it's difficult, all you have to do is go round the edge of the pastry like that, which is what we used to do in the in the bakery, and then pop the lid on gently. Now I find when I'm doing small pies like this, it's very difficult to crimp the edges, so I use a fork and I just squash the 2 edges together gently like that. So they're going to go in the oven now when I've egg washed them, and they'll be in at 200 degrees. You see, I just wanted to do that just to show you. Crimping like that with your fingers is very difficult when it's such a tiny little pie like that. So the egg wash is the simplest. The fork is the simplest thing. So we're going to go all over the pie tops now. If they look a bit rustic, don't worry about it. They're homemade pies, and you know they need to look and taste like that. They don't need to look like Mr. Kipling's made them. They're going to go in the oven now at 200 degrees for about 15 minutes, probably 20, but we'll have a look at them at 15. Now here's a nice idea with this same filling. This time I've made some puff pastry. I actually had this in the freezer ready made, so I've cut it into about 5 or 6 inch squares like that, and we're going to put a nice dollop of filling in the middle. Like that. We're going to egg wash the edges. You can use water, by the way. As I said, I've just cracked an egg to do the tops of these. No point in wasting the egg because I won't use it all for the tops. So I'm using it to use as the glue. You can use just water, it's quite all right. Round we go. And once we've got those like that, we're going to take one corner up to the middle there, and the next 2 corners up to the middle like that. and we're going to just seal the edge that we've got there together, if we can. There we are. Just seal the edge together. So we're going to take up to there and up to there, up to there and up to there, just like a parcel, and then just seal the corners just to make sure nothing's going to escape. Up to there and over, up to there and over, and just close the corners up where you can see the gap, press down where the seam is, and we should be good to go. So here's my baking sheet, and I'm just going to pop them like that. And get the egg wash, exactly the same as we did with the pies, all over the top. Give them a good egg wash like that. This will give them a nice glaze and make them look very appetizing as they come out of the oven. What I'm going to do with these now, just to make them look a little bit different, I've got a few sesame seeds here, and I'm just going to sprinkle a few sesame seeds on the top, on the egg wash. Like that. Now they need to go in the fridge now for about 25 to 30 minutes just to settle down, and then we'll pop them in the oven. They'll go in at 220 degrees, that's a little bit hotter than the pies that are in there, and they'll be in there for about 17 or 18 minutes. Okay? Well, here they are, just out of the oven, and I've let them cool about 10 or 15 minutes just before I took them out of the tins. And you can see them here now. Bottoms perfectly cooked. No soggy bottoms. The pasties are the same, nice, and which is a one-off for me, no leakages. Anyway, we'll have a look inside one and see what happened. And there we are, a beautiful, moist chicken, mushroom and ham pie, and it looks absolutely delicious. Well, that's all I have time for today. It's nice to be back, and thank you for joining me. If you have any comments, questions or suggestions, leave them in the box underneath where it says comments. I do read every single one, and if I have the time, I reply to as many as possible. If you haven't subscribed, press this subscribe button underneath, there it is. Give it a little click and you'll see a little bell at the side. When you click that, YouTube will inform you every time I put up a new video, so you won't miss one. Well, Mr. Paul saying bye for now, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!